Good afternoon. I'd like to call the January 1st, 2024 Town Board meeting to order, and we'll start with the swearing in. Swearing in of Supervisor Molly Collins.
Who's that? Molly.
Raise your right hand and put your left hand on the Bible and repeat after me.
Okay.
I
Molly A. Collins,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of supervisor
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of supervisor
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you.
Now, council member-elect, Mrs. Terry Gallucci will come up with her family.
Raise your right hand, put your left hand on the Bible, and repeat after me. I, Terry Gallucci,
I, Terry Gallucci,
do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
I will faithfully discharge the
Of-
duties of the office
of the Town Board
Town Board
of Rotterdam,
of Rotterdam,
according to the best of my ability, so help me
according
God.
to the best of my ability. So help me God. Next is council member-elect Ron Schlott.
Raise your right hand, put your left hand on the Bible, and repeat after me. I, Ron Schlog,
I, Ron Schlag,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of
Town
the
Board.
town board,
Board.
sorry, according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my abilities, so help me God.
Now that everyone's been sworn in, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll?
Larry.
I'm sorry.
We didn't forget about you, Larry.
Highway Superintendent Larry Lamora. Sorry.
Raise your right hand and put your left hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I, Larry Lamora, do solemnly affirm
I, Larry Lamora, do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Highway Superintendent
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Highway Superintendent
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Marco, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Dodson?
Here.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
Mrs. Galucci?
Present.
Mr. Schlad?
Present.
Mrs. Collins?
Present.
5 present.
Thank you, Ms. Marco. A quorum is present. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Galucci, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank you all for coming to our 2024 organizational meeting. I'm looking forward to 2024 and any challenges that lay ahead. And I would like to welcome the new council members, Mrs. Terry Galucci and Mr. Ronald Schwab. We have a public hearing and a full agenda, so I will save any further comments until the end of this meeting. Okay? We'll now open public hearing number 1 for the enactment of introductory local law number blank of 20 blank relating to establishing an amendment and 6-month extension to Local Law 9 of 2022, which established a moratorium on solar farms and solar power plants. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Kim Scanelli?
Good afternoon, Happy New Year. Welcome to all the new board members. I want to thank you all for your consideration of extending the moratorium on solar plants. As you know, as I've said before to the prior board members and certainly to some of the newer board members, both of you actually, we have made such good progress as an Energy Advisory Committee, and I couldn't be any prouder of the work that we've done. I work basically here at a town level, but I also network with the whole state, and by far Rotterdam has done more to protect its citizens than any other town in New York. So thank you. Thank you for your continued support of the Energy Advisory Committee, and let's have the best possible year we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Markovich, you didn't say what you were speaking about. Are you speaking about the public hearing?
I got comments, public comment.
About the public hearing?
Public comment.
Privilege. Thank you, that's what I need to, and that's it.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this public hearing but didn't sign up?
There's just 2 statements of people that couldn't come.
They want me to read?
If you could, I'll just have it read.
Okay. There's 2 statements here. It says, Rotterdam Town Board, we are not able to attend today's public hearing regarding extension of the solar moratorium. We ask the board to support the extension to ensure that the code is in the best interest of Rotterdam and its residents. The code needs to support the comprehensive plan and preserve the rural character as outlined in the comprehensive plan. Thank you, Samantha and Kyle Quinn, 807 Sandburn Road, Pattersonville, New York. The other one is, please note for the record that I support an extension of the solar moratorium. The committee needs more time to develop a solar code that is aligned with the comprehensive plan. Thank you, Dave Malowitz, 457 Sandburn Road.
Thank you. And I'd just like to briefly,
Can you just state your name, honey?
yes, I'm sorry, thank you. Patty Malowitz, 457 Sanborn Road.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would just like to reinforce the hope that the board will support an extension on the moratorium. As a member of the committee, we are very, very close to a comprehensive code that will support the comprehensive plan and benefit the residents of Rotterdam. And as a private citizen, I'd like to implore you to extend this moratorium because I want to, see our comprehensive plan respected. So thank you very much and Happy New Year to
Thank you.
everybody.
Happy New Year. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on the public hearing?
Hi, Andrea Capola, 625 River Road. I also would like to support the extension of time for 6 months, please, because they're very close and they're trying, let's face it, technology changes every time we turn around. I also would like, as a taxpayer, to suggest that you keep the Energy Committee intact because as things change, we have to re-examine what is in the law, and maybe things will have to be tweaked every so often. Please keep these people and this committee intact. Make it a permanent committee. Also, I'd like to suggest maybe you could give them a stipend, because they do run around and they use up some gasoline. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Renee Mertens, and I am also encouraging the board to support the continuation of the moratorium for the Solar Committee and the Energy Committee. I am also on that committee, as you already know. We are making great progress. We have some really talented people that have nothing but the best interests of the town of Rotterdam in mind, and we want to protect our citizens and, of course, all that enter into our town barriers, and maybe those even in the surrounding areas of Rotterdam. So thank you for the consideration. I do want you to support that moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in this public hearing? Then I'll entertain a motion to keep the public hearing open.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes to keep the public hearing open.
Okay, motion passed. We'll now move on to privilege of the floor. I will remind everybody that I have a timer. You have 4 minutes. When you get to about 3.5 minutes, you'll see my hand go up, and you can wrap up your comments. Margo, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Peter Markovich?
Why do you, when you list the time limit, you always look at me? First off, Happy New Year to everyone. I believe 2024 will be interesting and probably scary for everybody.
Peter, you got to get real close so they can't hear you.
I bet you're in the room, Ken.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, whatever. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Wow. Okay. What I wanted to do was is read something that was written a long time ago by some people. It's Psalm 91, and I use this as a direction towards our board members newly elected and sitting another year. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked, because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge. No evil shall befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him, because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. I ask that the board looks upon their higher power to get to get guidance on how to better direct our town for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor?
Brenda, Rotterdam. Okay, number one, in regards to the metering plan for Water District Number 5, it was reported in the Schenectady Gazette, December 24th, Rotterdam re-examines water meter plan. The plan for meters for District 5. The plan for District 5 was agreed in 2019 between the town and DEC. Meters for all is a condition or a requirement by DEC to increase water usage in the town. In respect to water plan for District 5, the plan was drafted to comply with DEC mandate, submitted by the town and approved by DEC in 10/10/2019. In regards to the town board's response to meters from 2020 to 2023, and you guys know what your response was, constantly. This town board, with the exception of the 2 new members, assured residents in Water District 5 no plans to install meters. Not only did this board, along with Mr. Evans and Ms. Miller, mislead the residents, this board knew about the agreement with DEC. They revised the water implementation plan on 6/15/2020. Response from the town board regarding the implementation of the meters. This town board in 2020 knew of the meter implementation plan and did nothing to comply with DEC. The residents of District 5 were and have been lied to. Grant approval for Water District 5. In 2022, the town applied for a $5 million grant for Water District 5. Didn't get it. According to Supervisor Collins, the state ran out of funds. Not true. The application submitted was incomplete. 2023, no grant was awarded to District Water 5. Why did the town not announce at any of the meetings that they did not receive any grant for 2023? The residents of Rotterdam, particularly Water District 5, deserve transparency from this board. In regards to the loan for District 5, the town received state-funded subsidized loan for $34 million water plants in District 5. When it's all said and done, when this bill is paid, when it comes time due, how much will the residents have to pay even after the $14 million loan reduction? In regards to the town and DEC, on November 8th, 2023, the town board met with DEC. Why was this meeting not brought up in any of the town hall meetings? The residents deserve to know what is happening in their town. The future finances of Rotterdam. The comptroller position was posted on November 27th. The comptroller was let go, was fired at the same time that 4,000 users were found. Coincidence? Yeah, I don't think so. Something rotten's happening in Rotterdam. Last week, somebody who I know in Rotterdam told me I need to thank the town of Rotterdam for lowering District 5 bill. I don't owe you guys an apology. I don't owe you guys a thank you. You guys owe us an apology. The reason why our water bill went down, and people better understand this, is because you guys found 4,000 people And I got you, and in the report, there's possibly another 7,000 in District 5 that is not being filled. Also, thank you for the 2% cap. My taxes went up, and the town went up 6.5, highway went up 5%, and at the last meeting, Mr. Evans asked, did we comply with the 2% cap? And everybody said yes, and you guys did not. Again, not only did you lie to us, you lied to a board member.
Don't forget your water.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else? Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? No? Okay, then I'm closing privilege of the floor, and we'll move on to our resolutions. Our first resolution is Resolution 1 of the year 2024, and the clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute an agreement with Romer, Wallens, Gold, and Manu as attorneys for the town of Rotterdam and as attorneys for the town planning commission.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yeah, I'd like to explain my vote. I think that it would be beneficial to the town to have a dedicated town attorney, so I'm voting no.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
So 4 yes and 1 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 2 of the year 2023, the clerk will read, or 2024 rather, the clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute an agreement with Romer, Wallens, Gold, and Manu, LLP as the labor relations attorneys and consultants.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 abstain.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 3 of the year 2023, the clerk will read.
To reappoint Charles Jack Dodson to the position of deputy supervisor.
Okay. On any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson? Are you
Abstain.
abstaining?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 abstain.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 4 of the year 2023, the clerk will read.
To reappoint Megan Griffin to the position of confidential secretary to the supervisor.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Yeah, Madam Supervisor, I would like to recuse myself from this and leave the dais. There are 4 individual resolutions that I will have to recuse myself from. So I have a letter that I can give to you to be entered in the meeting minutes.
All right. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I heard Mr. Mastriani's voice first, but unless someone can tell me different. All right, on the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Abstain.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 abstain.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 5 of the year 2023, the clerk will read, or 2024, I'm so sorry.
To appoint Morgan Coyer to the position of personnel and benefits coordinator.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schwab. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 6 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To appoint Linda Testa to the position of project coordinator, Office of the Aging, part-time.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schwab. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes, and I believe Mrs. Testa is here. If she wants to stand up and be recognized.
All right.
Our next resolution is Resolution 7 of the year 2023. Clerk will read.
To appoint Thomas Ewell as a member of the Town Planning Commission.
Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, there's something I wish to say. Before the board votes on the next two resolutions, I want to state that Tom Ewell has served as a member of the Planning Commission for the past 7 years and has been chairman for the past 2 years. He has donated his time and come into the Department of Public Works every day to work with our senior planner and other members of our staff. He also makes himself available to meet with any developers, either in the office or at the site. Mr. Ewell works with Metroplex and has developed a strong relationship with the chairman, Mr. Gillen, to attract businesses to Rotterdam. The job of chairman of the Planning Commission goes beyond just attracting businesses to Rotterdam. It is also protecting the residents of Rotterdam by making sure that any new development is completed in a timely manner and meets all town codes. The dedication and time that Mr. Ewell has shown as a member and chairman of the Planning Commission is why I recommend we all vote yes on the next two resolutions. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I have a second? Okay. Resolution number 7, as stated, and the agenda has failed.
I'll make a motion to appoint Kim Scannell to the member of the Planning Commission.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. On the question? Okay. Clerk, want to call the roll on the motion?
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
No.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no.
Okay, so the motion passes. So I have a legal question. Can it still be resolution number 7?
Yeah, it's still the phone.
So resolution number 7, do you have the changes, Ms. Marco? Okay. Would you read resolution number 7, please?
To appoint Thomas Ewell as a member of the Town Planning Commission.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
No.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
1 no, 4 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 8 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To appoint Thomas Ewell as chair of the Town Planning Commission.
Do I have a motion? Or we'll repeat it. I'll motion. I motion. Do I have a second? Okay, so the resolution will fail. Does anyone else want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to appoint Kim Scannell as chairman of the Planning Commission.
I second the motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Dodson to appoint Kim Scannell as chair of the Town Planning Commission, seconded by Mrs. Galucci. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
No.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no.
Motion passes. So now will the clerk read the new resolution number 8 of the year 2024.
All right, so to appoint, I'm sorry, Kim Scannelli? Is that the great? Scannell, I'm sorry. To appoint Kim Scannell as a member of the Town Planning Commission?
No, is that chair?
I'm chair, I'm sorry, as chair of the Town Planning Commission, sorry.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
No.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no.
Resolution passes. Our next resolution is resolution number 9 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To execute an agreement with Marlo Carter for secretarial and transcription services for the Planning Commission.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 10 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To appoint Phil Eads as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 11 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To appoint Philip Eads as chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 12 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To execute an agreement with Lisa Gallo for secretarial and transcription services for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schlad. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 13 of the year 2023, or 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute an agreement with Michael Manchin, ESQ, as attorney for the Ethics Board.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. I believe Mr. Manchin is here. If you'd like to stand. Congratulations. The next resolution is Resolution 14 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To appoint members of the Town of Rotterdam Ethics Committee.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 15 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To appoint various members to the Town of Rotterdam Emergency Medical Board.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schlad. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson? Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 16 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To appoint and reappoint members of the Town of Rotterdam Conservation Advisory Council.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Our next resolution is Resolution 17 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To appoint and reappoint members of the Town of Rotterdam Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schlad. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlad?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. The next resolution is Resolution 18, but there's a letter I'd like to read to, this was in the agenda minutes, Dear Town Board members and Town Clerk, in accordance with the New York General Municipal Law and the Town of Rotterdam Code of Ethics, I am disclosing to you that Resolution Number 18.24, currently on the agenda for the Town Board meeting scheduled for January 1st, 2024, would appoint my husband, Clark Collins, as part-time water treatment plant operator. If approved, my husband's rate of pay would be $35 per hour. Because this resolution would appoint my husband, I am providing this written disclosure that I may be deemed to have an interest in this appointment. This disclosure is being sent to the Town Board, the Town Clerk, and I am asking that it be included within the agenda materials in advance of the meeting. I am also asking that this letter be included in the official records of the Town Board's January 1st, 2024 meeting. Finally, in addition to making written disclosure in this letter, I have also chosen to recuse myself from any discussion or vote on this resolution. I will not be participating in any discussion or vote on this matter at the January 1st, 2024 meeting. I know that legal counsel has said that we do not have to leave the dais. However, I'm old school, and I will be leaving the dais and turning the meeting over to the deputy supervisor.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also have to recuse myself, given my relationship with Ms. Griffin on this one as well, but I'm not old school, so I'm going to stay on the dais.
Very good. Ms. Marco, will you read Resolution 18 of 2024?
To appoint individuals to the various positions and titles for the calendar year 2024.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Terry. On the question? Clerk, Ms. Marco, will you call?
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Abstain.
Miss and Mrs. Collins? I think both of you recused yourself, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So the resolution is approved.
3 yes.
Let Molly know she's
Molly.
coming back.
Molly, we're good. We're good.
Excuse me. The next resolution is Resolution Number 19 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Adopting rules of order for regularly scheduled town board meetings.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. My hearing isn't what it used to be. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 20 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorize and approving the investment policies and guidelines for the town of Rotterdam.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 21 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorize and approving the purchasing policy and procedures for the town of Rotterdam.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Schwab. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 22 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Appointing the town board of the town of Rotterdam as the official board of health for 2024.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Our next resolution is Resolution 23 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Establishing the town board liaisons assignments for the calendar year of 2024.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Our next resolution is Resolution 24 of the year 2024. Clerk will read.
Appointing individuals as members of the Sick Leave Fund Committee.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 25 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Adopting the 2024 Town of Rotterdam meetings schedule.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is resolution number 26 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Adopting the salaries of all elected officials, appointed officials, annually rated permanent employees in the competitive and non-competitive classes of civil service employment and directing payment thereof.
All right, is there any discussion?
Yeah, this will be another one I will need to recuse myself on as well.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Recuse.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
So 4 yes, 1 recused.
Resolution passed. Resolution number 27 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Approving the extension of benefits to qualified elected and full-time appointed positions.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Yeah, I will recuse myself from this one as well.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other further discussion? Then, can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Recuse.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes,
4 yes, 1 recused.
resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 28 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Approve overtime payments to employees upon written approval of the town supervisor and/or designees, except in emergency situations.
Okay, is there any discussion? Oh. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes,
5 yes.
resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 29 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor and/or her designee to approve the attendance of employees at various schools and authorize the payment of expenses thereof.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 30 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorizing the chief of police and/or his designee to approve the attendance of any member of the police department at various schools, training sessions, conventions, conferences, or other meetings required said attendance.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, second by Mr. Schwab. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 31 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to approve the transfer of funds to the chief of police for asset forfeiture investigations during 2024.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is that right?
Ron?
I'm sorry. I told you my head is still a little stubby. Okay, motion by Mr. Schlag. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 32 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Establishing petty cash funds.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 33 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Establish bank depositories for the town of Rotterdam.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 34 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Reimbursement rate for mileage.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 35 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Designate the Daily Gazette as the official newspaper.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
No.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 36 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute an agreement for participation in the Schenectady County Stop DWI program for the year 2024.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
The tie.
Ron.
Well, let's see. Mr. Schlag,
Right.
seconded. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 37 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorize the utilization of specific engineering firms to act as town-designated engineers for 2024.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 38 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute an agreement with FCM Engineering, PLLC.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schwab.
Yes.
Oh, my God. All right. It's getting warm. It's too many on this one. All right. Anyway, I'm sorry. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 39 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute an agreement or a contract with Ben Moore Photography Video.
I'll make a motion.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I heard.
I'll make a motion.
I thought.
Motion by Mr. Schwab. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 40 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute a renewal contract with the Boys and Girls Club.
All right. Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 41 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute a contract with the Arts Center and Theater Open Stage Media.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 42 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute an agreement with Cusick and Company Certified Public Accountants, LLC.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Who's first?
Joe. Joe.
Mr. Mastriani,
Joe is
your motion. Are you second?
I'll be second.
Second is Mr. Dodson.
Thank you.
On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 43 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute a contract with Scott M. Miranda, LLC to represent tax litigation matters for the year 2024.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 44 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute a contract with Bartlett, Pontiff, Stewart, and Rhodes, P.C. to act as attorneys for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 45 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorize and direct the supervisor and/or designee to prepare and file with the town clerk the annual financial report within 120 days of the close of the 2023 fiscal year and direct the town clerk to publish the necessary legal notice.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schwab. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 46 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute an agreement with Industrial and Utility Valuation Consultants, Inc.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 47 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute an agreement with Hodgkin and Russ LLP, bond counsel attorneys.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second? I'll second. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 48 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
Authorizing the supervisor to negotiate and execute an agreement with Oric, Harrington, and Sutcliffe LLP bond counsel.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlott?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 49 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To enact introductory local law number 1 of 2024, establishing an amendment and 6 months extension to local law 9 of 2022, which established 12-month moratorium on solar farms and solar power plants.
I'd like to make a motion to table.
Okay. There's a motion to table this resolution. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, say second.
Did Ron say second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Clerk will call the roll.
To table, Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
I'd just like an official opinion on the status of a solar moratorium in the expiration of the enacted moratorium in 2022 and the non-renewal at this point. Is there a gap here where there isn't a moratorium?
Yes, but there's a pending extension of the moratorium going on, so nobody's going to be able to make it through a planning process or anything like that for a large-scale solar facility by the time this is enacted. So there's no real threat that we're going to have a large-scale solar company coming in who's going to be able to complete all of that prior to the amendment being in place and extending things going. So yes, technically there is a gap. No, is that going to put the town in any threat that there's going to be a large-scale solar company coming in and all of a sudden building outside of any who might have been exempted from the original moratorium that was in place.
Thank you for the clarification.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
All right, so we have a motion to table Resolution 49.24. Is there any other discussion?
I'll second the motion.
We've already...
No, I think we're voting.
We're voting, I just want to make sure there's no more discussion, okay. All right, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes to table.
Okay. Our next resolution is Resolution 50 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To accept town board meeting minutes.
Okay, do I have any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Okay. Excuse me. That concludes our resolutions for this evening. We'll now move on to liaison reports. Do any of the board members have anything they wish to say under liaison reports or even under miscellaneous?
Yes, I'd like to issue 3 liaison reports to the new board and to the public. I guess we'll start with the Energy Committee. The Energy Committee has a full plate of tasks. We are at the final stages of a first draft of new solar code. The Energy Committee has also been tasked with the creation of wind code and battery energy storage code. The committee has not worked on wind code at all. Our town planner and others have suggested that there hasn't been any interest in Rotterdam for wind turbine projects because of the direction that the wind flows, that the engineers and experts have determined that Rotterdam isn't a likely site. But the committee has done a lot of work on battery energy storage system code. It is not in relation to the work that the Rotterdam Energy Committee is doing, but in relation to the newness of the technology and the governor creating a task force to look more closely at the battery fires that existed in 2023. And there hasn't been any news from the state about when that committee is going to meet and even who the members are. It's my opinion that not because we don't have good code to put forward, but we should follow the governor's lead in slow rolling battery energy storage system code. But that is, going to continue to be, looked at and developed. The Conservation Committee got a grant last year to put in informational kiosks within the Great Flats Nature Trail. It's a phenomenal project. Morgan Croyer, at the time, the director of parks, filed that grant, and it was the first she ever applied for a grant, and she received it. And the Conservation Committee is going to work to fix the decking and the walkways in the Great Flats Nature Trail. There's a duck blind there that is sunk into the swamp. So there's construction work that needs to be done, but also is going to be putting in these new kiosks that, you may be able to have a QR code that could link to, a podcast about the fauna and the flora and what the history and what you're seeing within the trail. So it's an exciting project. The Parks Committee, we've appointed some new members. There's still actually an open vacancy in the Parks Committee, and we are entertaining that vacancy. There's a lot of desire to see some improvements in our parks. There's a lot of talk about dog park areas, an inexpensive thing that could be done, perhaps at Memorial Park, perhaps at other parks, but that's something that the Parks Committee would like to look at, and it has some other ideas. It's an active committee, especially when the summertime gets going. With gift from Schenectady County, I'd like to acknowledge County Legislator Josh Cuomo, who's here, and Eric Hess, who's here. The Rotterdam Babe Ruth Organization and RC Little League were able to improve the infield at Memorial Park, and hopefully we can have more games this year with a concession stand running. There's a boat launch coming in with grant assistance at Kiwanis Park, and the Parks Committee is tasked with overlooking. We're waiting on the architects to present 2 possible drafts for a boat launch, and with the feedback of the Parks Committee and the public and the board, we can put something together and get it built hopefully within the first half of 2024. I think that's it.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on any of the liaison committees or under miscellaneous?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I mean, I would like to thank everyone that's sitting out there today for coming. I've sat out there a lot of times, and I appreciate your time, especially on New Year's Day. Appreciate my family being here in support, and I appreciate the voters that voted for me. But I appreciate all the residents and absolutely do our best by you as best we can.
Let's see, I'd like to thank and look forward to working with our new board members. Congratulations. I won't speak for Molly, but I'm going to hopefully promise that we don't have a 50-item agenda for you for the next meeting. In addition to that, I'd like to thank all the members that were appointed to committees. Thank you. Again, tireless effort when you get appointed to committees. It's for your community. It's the civic duty. Many people think that we just appoint you on these committees and you don't do anything, but I think many of the people that are on these committees realize that we expect work, and there's good things that are being done in our town, so thank you very much.
And I just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody out there who supported us throughout all this journey, and my family. And I'm so excited about the work that the committees have done and the possibilities for the future. I think that we should all be really excited about that. So I encourage everyone to get involved. Can you imagine if 32,000 people just did something wonderful within our town? The possibilities are endless. So thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Supervisor, I also have some miscellaneous comments. I'd like to acknowledge Tom Ewell. Tom has served on the planning board for many years and has led the planning board. It was a very difficult decision about his appointment. There are 7 members on the planning board, and they have 7-year terms each. And the board gets to appoint 1 member every year. It's kind of like the Senate in a way. So it was a very difficult decision, and the decision not to appoint Tom was not because of the effort that he puts in and the terrific job that he does in stewarding projects through our town, but because of the interest in this board and its functions and the candidates that wanted to serve on it. We decided to go in a different direction, and Kim Scannell is going to do a phenomenal job. She attends every planning board meeting. The effort that she puts forward is so vital. The vision that she has for our town, our comprehensive plan that we adopted in 2022 talks about corridors and gateways, and we don't want more apartments. We don't want to change the character of town, either the rural side or the suburban side. But we have great corridors and gateways. We have 3 throughway exits in Rotterdam. We have 4 exits off of 890. These are gateways, and in the corridors that we have, we need to develop. And I have full faith in Kim that she will work with developers to develop Campbell Road, which has exciting possibilities going forward, and the other great corridors in town: Hamburg Street, Elmont Avenue, Burbeck Street, Main Street, and the Junction. I'd like to, Kim, I'm excited about, and whatever we can do as a town to increase the development that we want to see, that's what we want to do. Also, I'd like to talk about water meters, which is like the greatest fake news scare ever. Okay. Well, I'll make my comments. I'll make my comments, and then 2 weeks from now, you can make your comments. We've got a 2-week-long texting conversation, if that's how you want to do it. But I just want to clarify some things. The DEC mandate is not law, okay? And we don't have the money to put in water meters, nor the interest. No one on this board was on the board in 2020, the date that you referenced. And we've been 100% transparent about the process going forward. We have over $100 million of capital projects that this town needs to do, not like, wishes to do. We have our sewage treatment plant needs to be upgraded. We need to replace water lines that are 70 years old. There's tons of information about that. The water bill went down because of the efficiency that this board was able to extract in the 2 years that this new administration has been in. There was a misconception also that water delivered to your house used to be $25 or $75. Those were supplemental fees that were issued in June, but prior to 2022, every property owner paid for water delivered to their house in their January property taxes, and then was assessed an additional $75 fee. Now it's combined, and it went down because of efficiency. And we've also complied with the New York State tax cap laws, because non-compliance with the tax cap laws results in penalties to star rebate owners. People's property taxes went up, but the total budget of the town stayed within 2%, which is what the tax cap law is. And in spite of all the massive infrastructure projects that we need to take on, the evaluation of a new highway garage, the evaluation of a new court, police station, we will do this in as frugal fashion as possible. We will look towards increased business development to help offset those costs, and we will be transparent 100% of the time. Mr. Rojan also spoke about the town's need for a new comptroller in a way to kind of address controversy. There is no controversy. We are looking for a new comptroller. The position is listed, and we are leaning heavily on our deputy comptroller, Paul Sebesta, who was a 34-year veteran of the town of Niskuna, and now a 2-year veteran of the town of Rotterdam, who is shouldering just a massive load at the time, and wants nothing more than to pass down his decades of experience to a protege. So, we are hoping that we can find somebody that can step into that role and take on Paul's level of excellence, and we're very fortunate to have him. And I'd also like to welcome the new town board members. Look forward to their involvement and our communication and working towards solutions and feedback from the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting until 7 p.m. this evening.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schwab?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
Thank you.
5 yes, so this meeting is adjourned until 7 p.m. this evening. Thank you. Should I wear that?
Should you? Yeah.
Okay.
That came from Pete.
We got everybody? Yeah.
Everyone we're gonna have.
Okay. Do I need a motion to open it? Or we're just continuing?
It's a continuation of the public hearing.
We're continuing the public hearing on the enactment of introductory local law number blank of 20 blank relating to establishing an amendment and 6-month extension to local law 9 of 2022, which established a 12-month moratorium on solar farms and solar power plants. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to
it.
speak?
Did anybody sign it? I don't think they did, but.
Yeah, you can bring it up to her.
No.
No?
No.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that didn't sign up to speak at the public hearing but would like to speak at the public hearing?
Guess not.
Thank you. All right, I'll ask another time. Is there anybody, are you sure that anyone in the audience that might not have signed up to speak at the public hearing for this law and didn't sign up but would like to speak? I'll ask one last time. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak?
So we're just gonna leave it open.
Okay, then we'll be leaving the public hearing open
For our meeting on January 10th, right?
January 10th.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a motion to officially?
There is no
close?
Okay.
We're good.
That's it.
Thank you.
Well, good to see you.